Howdy, folks. Today we are here with Gwen O'Reilly. She and her husband Auden are some of our original founding members of the South African Institute of Canada. And I brought Gwen on today because, tax season are upon us here in Canada. And I've always kind of done my own taxes through some of the base platforms. And, there's places where you can do your taxes for like $20 or $30 and it's cheap and it's all there. But then again, I've realized lately that, as they always used to say, goedkoop koop is sometimes duur koop, right? Because you save like $100 on your tax filing, but you miss out on a bunch of things that you could have claimed or a bunch of benefits that you could have had. So that's why I brought Gwen on. She's from Maslow Pro. And Gwen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in broad terms before we get into the tax season?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, everybody. It's good to be back here. So, as you know, I'm Gwen. I run Maslow Pro Financial Services Inc. And we're a company that specializes in Forex, all things tax related between Canada and South Africa, and business activities as well. So, I am a tax practitioner in Canada and South Africa. And then we have the financial planning, investments, estate insurance side of our business, which is then run by my husband, Auden O'Reilly.
Awesome. Thanks, Gwen. So just to make that clear, folks, Gwen is a tax practitioner in Canada and in South Africa. So us Sapphires that's moved over the pond to this side, and you have taxes in South Africa and taxes in Canada, it can get quite complex to report it the right way. So that's why we need people like Gwen that understands both sides of the whole thing, right?
Yes, and just to add to that, because a lot of people talk about cross-border tax, and they're just only interested in that, meaning that you don't pay more taxes, but actually it's about paying the correct tax in the correct country at the correct time.
Yeah, which is, it gets a little bit fuzzy there sometimes,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Look, we all want to pay as little taxes as possible. I mean, let's not lie about that. But at the same time, you also don't want to risk yourself getting into trouble, right? You don't want
Yes,
to end
definitely.
up 3 or 4 years down the line with a giant tax bill from SARS or somebody like chasing you down. I mean,
Yes, and we've seen that.
I really, I can imagine. Oh my God. All right. So, Gwen, let's get into the tax season here in Canada. What are the dates? When do we need to get what done?
So the main dates to remember is that tax season does open on the 23rd of Feb. So as personal filers, your deadline to file your tax returns would be the 30th of April. And then if you're self-employed, that would be the 15th of June. So the earlier you get in there, the better, because you never know if you're going to audits and so forth. You want to, especially if you plan to be in a refund position, you want to
Yeah,
get that done early, right?
of course, yeah. Well, and if you are going to have to pay in taxes, you also want to get it done
Exactly,
early because
yes.
otherwise they fine you. I just got a
True.
PST fine for $50 because I submitted it on time, but it has to go through the bank. They take the
Oh,
money off,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then they
after a few
take the money
days.
off 5 days later from my
Yeah.
bank account, and it's late. And they go, "Oh no, no, you're going to pay a 10% fine." I'm like, "What?"
Yes,
Anyway.
every revenue agency wants to get more money.
Yeah, they just love it when you're a little late because then they can hammer you for fines and interest and stuff, right?
Definitely.
Anyway. Okay, so just a quick one. So the difference between the 30th of April and the 15th of June. 30th of April is when you get a T4 slip, you're working
Correct.
for a company, right?
Correct.
And 15th of June is when you basically, you just like,
So self-employed, your own business, in your individual capacity though,
okay, so
because remember
not
that
a
not a
corporation.
corporation. No, because then a corporation tax return would then be due 6 months after your your corporate year end, right?
Of course,
That
yes.
would be different. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And I mean, like if I get a T4,
Mm.
right? Like I said before, I mean, I used to for the last couple of years, we would just go in and go on one of the platforms. I think we use Wealth Simple, and we just go
Okay.
pull out everything in there.
Yeah.
And it seems quite simple, but I have also found that sometimes we don't claim the correct uh, uh, medical things and stuff like
Correct.
that. And to be
Yeah.
quite frank, we actually had an audit. What happened was submitted everything, and I didn't read the paperwork right. So what happened?
Mm.
It was a couple of 2 years ago. I didn't read the rules right, so I claimed a bunch of medical stuff, which our accountant that used to do this stuff didn't claim the previous year.
Yeah.
And then when I claimed it, they were like, just send us proof of all of the stuff that you claimed. And I sent it in, and they were like, oh, no, dude, you can't claim stuff from a year ago.
Yes.
You can't, it's not like South Africa where we could claim stuff
You can. Yes. Yes. And
later.
certain instances, I mean, there are stuff that can roll over into another year. But I think that is one of my points is that it's very important to document everything, keep document and keep proper records for the audit purposes. And then that's another, and then the other point is that, yeah, you could go onto these platforms. And yes, in a lot of cases, it could be simple, right? You have a simple income stream and the software should, and based on the package that you sometimes pay for, the software should also prompt you about the different types of benefits or tax credits and all of that, right? But then the benefit sometimes that comes into talking to somebody that is more knowledgeable and having somebody you can actually have a face-to-face interaction with is that it's a more personalized service, right? And it's tailored to your family needs because there's things that can be deducted, things that can't be deducted, and a lot of people don't know. You know, for example, a childcare benefit, you may think, oh, you're automatically registered once you come into Canada and file a tax return. It's not, right? It's something that you have to register for. And then in terms of uh, tax strategy, right? There's certain things that is beneficial to claim under the lower income spouses tax return, and people don't know that. So that's why it's good to file your tax returns together as a household,
Yeah.
because then you're able to plan better, right, in terms of the strategies and who is entitled to benefits and so on.
Of course, yeah. Like I said, I suppose the old South African Afrikaans saying, goedkoop koop is duur koop. You're
Yes.
saving yourself 100 or 200 bucks on your filing, but you
Yes.
end up losing out on some of the benefits that you could have claimed. And it's actually
Mm.
quite surprising now that you mentioned childcare benefits. I think that there's a lot of people that actually don't know that if you have a
No.
kid in Canada, you are even,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a fairly high salary to not get any childcare
Mm.
benefit,
Mm.
right?
Yes. So it's all dependent on your household income, right? And then,
Yeah,
as I said, a lot of people think that you're automatically eligible for it. There are some people I've met, well, lots of people I've met who've been in Canada for numerous years, and they had no idea that they're entitled to the claim. Um,
that's
so
right.
it's
Yeah.
it's little things like that, right? And as you said, you can save on the tax return on the submission, but then you could have maximized your refunds if you went an alternative route and actually spoke to
That's right, yeah. And well, just let me just take one step back and go back to my little story about getting audited for our medical
yeah.
stuff. I mean, it's not like we got into trouble. They didn't send us a fine or anything. They just
Mm.
adjusted the tax thing.
Yes, correct.
But it was an enormous pain in the ass to
Yes,
go through all of this and communicate with them. And of course, the other thing is you're sitting there going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. What?
yes. So it
When-
happens a lot even with home expenses, home office expenses, right? Um, you're doing a tax return on your own. You don't know the correct forms to fill in. You're not sure of the correct forms that you have to support your expense claim. And
Yeah.
then you get this huge refund, right? Which you've used the money already.
Oh,
You've gone on
yeah.
your fancy
Go.
holiday. Okay. And then 2 years later, you get audited and you have to provide the support. And then CRA says, hey, you're not allowed to claim these things. You don't have the adequate support and it's not eligible as an expense. And here now you have to fork out all this money that you've already spent and you have to pay it back, which is a big inconvenience.
Yeah, yeah, that's not fun at all, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. And then
Anyway,
it's just extra work, right? Extra admin to now provide documents and go back and forth with CRA because the audits do take quite long to finalize.
yeah.
And what happens then is sometimes if you're in an audit and they say, hey, you have to pay these funds back, they don't, and you do your current tax returns, they won't release funds to you if you've got a refund and this outstanding amount that you owe them. And nobody
Well, and
wants
of
that,
course,
right?
I mean, let's not forget about that one thing. It's like if the tax man audits you, even if you've done nothing wrong, it's still not fun. You know,
Yes,
you still sit
exactly.
with this thing in the
With
back of
this,
your mind, like,
yes.
oh, what's going to
Did I
happen?
do something wrong? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Anyway, so Gwen, I guess then the baseline is speak to a tax consultant.
Yeah,
What
sure.
I know that it's difficult because I mean at the end of the day, everybody's taxes are different and you
Yes,
charge by the hour and you charge by
correct.
the amount of work that you go in. But if somebody has a very simple tax return, where does it start? I mean, what's the kind of price range roughly?
So I think it can start from, and everybody is different, right?
Of
It can
course.
start at $100 a tax return, but then it depends on your situation. And so our process is you would talk to us, we would assess your situation, and obviously, we're not going to charge you an exorbitant fee for a simple tax return. But sometimes you have to remember that for your first tax returns, a lot of the declarations are the same because CRA needs a complete profile of you, especially if they're then considering benefits that you may be entitled to, right?
Of course.
Um, the other thing that everybody needs to remember is to file a tax return, even if you've earned nothing. Now, that's different to SARS, where we sometimes don't file a tax return if we've earned no South African income. The difference here in Canada is that you have to file a tax return, even if you've earned no income for that year, because that is how CRA would assess your household income and and the amount of benefits that you may be eligible to. And that's something that a lot of people don't know as well.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yes.
Honestly. So, in other words, even if you have no income, okay, so
Yes.
just random idea, a random story then. Although, like Angelique, that's now turned 18,
Okay.
or turned 18 last year. She hasn't done any work or she doesn't have a job. So, technically, she should actually file a tax return as
You
well.
should. You should. You should. Yeah.
They know so
Because
much
then,
about
because
it.
you also get entitled to certain GST, HST benefits and something like that. Um, and as I said, to be eligible for certain benefits, you have to have a tax return filed with CRA.
Okay, interesting. And then another question. I mean, do you guys obviously through Audin's side or through your side, you guys
Mhm.
work with this and all of that? What's it? Investments of portions of your money and
Yes,
the
yes.
RRSPs and
So
all
a
of
lot
that
of
nonsense.
yes, so a lot of people, I mean, that immigrate to Canada as well, they've pulled out a lot of their investments, right? And then it's important to understand when you have to declare those types of withdrawals and fund transfers in Canada and how to do it. And then from Auden's side, he provides the guidance on how those funds can be invested in Canada, right?
Canada again.
Um, because the rules are different between countries, and RA in South Africa is not treated the same as, example, an RRSP in Canada. Um, and that's where a lot of people need guidance, right? Um, Also, like another thing I find is that, especially new immigrants, they're confused or not confused, but they're unaware about when they have to or what income they need to declare in Canada, right? A lot of people think, oh, moved to Canada in June 2025. I earned South African income prior to that. Now I'm a tax resident of Canada and I need to declare all my foreign income in Canada. And that's wrong. And I've seen a lot of clients then sit with audit queries then, and they're like, what do I need to declare? And you didn't need to declare that income in the first place, you know?
Oh, wow.
Um, because there's also a discrepancy and a misunderstanding between tax residency and your immigration status in Canada. And those two things are different. And once you come to Canada, you become a tax resident in Canada and you need to declare your worldwide income here. And see, things like that is where you sometimes need to talk to somebody who's actually involved with those situations and understands the implications, as I said, of the taxes in South Africa and taxes in Canada.
That's right. Speaking of tax residency, I
Mm.
mean, I believe we gave up our tax residency in South Africa. Our accountants, they said they filed it and everything. Not that I've actually seen a piece of paper, to be quite frank.
Okay,
Um, that's the type of things that you guys also take care of, I mean,
correct.
so you can
So
help
tax
people with that,
immigration. Yes,
tax
correct.
immigration.
So we provide tax immigration services um, for people that have transferred from South Africa to any part of the world. And it's just something that is important to be done to ensure that you've met all your tax obligations and you have no further tax implications to SARS. Because as you mentioned earlier in our chat, is that you don't want to be slapped with a huge bill somewhere down the line, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people think, hey, I've left the country, I don't need to submit anything. Um, and then 5 years later, then you're checking your tax compliance with SARS because you need to get some money out and you see non-compliant returns not submitted since 2018, penalties for non-submission. Because remember, SARS is aware of the income you've earned, right? Whether it's just a simple investment income, interest earned from the bank, you have to submit a tax return.
Yes.
And they have all this information and their system flags that you've earned this income, you haven't submitted tax returns, and it just gets a bit messy, right?
So
Um, yeah, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. So, I mean, there's a question there, though.
Mm,
Like, for instance, we don't have any income anymore. I mean,
okay.
we're actually becoming Canadian citizens. We're doing our oath ceremony next week, Friday.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
finally, so we don't have anything in South Africa,
Yeah.
but my mom still lives in South Africa, and one day there might be an inheritance in South
Okay.
Africa.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
think that's what you're saying about now is if I inherit some money in South Africa, even though I don't have anything, it's easy for me to say SARS can go like whatever. Um, if I get an inheritance in South Africa, then they might be able to hold on to that cash or block me from getting that out. Is that
So that's different, right? That is different because inheritances are taxed differently in South Africa.
okay?
Usually it's the state that will pay any taxes applicable, and then you will just get a payout. But yes, sometimes to transfer your money across, depending on the values, your bank, your financial institution would then possibly require something called, they'll require you to do tax immigration and an AIT, which is an approved international transfer of funds. And then you'd have the whole situation where they may then look into your SARS account, check that it's compliant. And in
Uh,
your case, if you've earned no income, um, you shouldn't have a problem.
yeah, well, I haven't submitted anything in South Africa for the
Okay.
last 5 years. I just basically just
Well, if that unfortunate day does come, you know who to contact.
I don't know who to contact. Yes. Okay. So, all right. So basically, the bottom line is it's important to speak to a professional.
Yes,
And the thing is, guys, what I like about Gwen and Auden is they are South Africans. They know what we're dealing with. They actually help South Africans all over Canada. They're based in, you guys are in Ontario,
we're
right?
in Ontario. Yeah.
Okay. They work with people all over Canada. So, it's like you could reach out and ask them any questions.
Yes,
So,
happy
Gwen,
to have a conversation anytime.
Another thing, what are some of the weirdest things that people do wrong, or what are some of the silliest things that people mess up when they do their taxes? I know this is a left field question, but
Oh, there's quite a few things, but I won't say silly, right? It's just a lack of knowledge.
yes,
And I mean, a lot of people must, you come to Canada, you use childcare services, right? Babysitters and so forth, as an example. Because a lot of parents know that's the only way we're going to get time to spend with each other is if we get a babysitter.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, depending on the babysitter that you use, though, you could claim the expenses in your tax return. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
But then I suppose you have to
There is
document
certain
it the right way.
requirements. Yes, there's certain requirements. You have to have the son of the person that, and obviously it's they would be probably like registered with CRA as performing babysitting services. You could claim those in your tax return.
Okay.
As I said, a lot of people have missed out on childcare benefits over the years because they just didn't know. Um,
And medical, I mean, how much, what medicals costs
So
can you claim?
medical costs is all depend. It's similar to SARS, where your deduction is dependent on your household income, and so forth. Right? There's different thresholds and calculations that happen on the back end of the system to determine how much you're eligible to claim. But I mean, just in terms of that, make sure you have all the necessary slips for. So if you have private insurance and things are not covered, you should get a statement, for example, from Sun Life that will show you all the expenses that you've tried to claim, but that they didn't pay out. So you would remember to use that in your tax return. But then also over-the-counter medication that you didn't necessarily go through Sun Life. Make sure you keep all those things because I mean we know that the costs do add up at the end of a tax year.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so make sure you claim those. If you have your child possibly private in a private school, there's some private schools that accept your tuition fee as actually a donation. And if you have the correct slip, you could claim that in your tax return.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so it's little things like that.
Yeah, it's all the little things that you don't necessarily think about, and those things can add
Yes,
up. It actually can make a big difference at the end of the day as to how much money you claim back or how much money you have to pay over, right?
correct, correct, correct.
Hmm, that's interesting. And then, of course, I think that there's a lot more benefits apart from childcare benefits as well. I mean, I get this
Yes,
stupid GST check every now and
yes.
again. I don't even know what it is. I'm paying much more GST, but I'm getting a little check
Free
for like
money. It's money you
$40.
never
And I'm
had.
like, what the hell is this?
It's money you never had. In certain provinces, you get like a carbon rebate tax. There's quite a few things, right? So just make
Yeah, it's,
sure you're aware of all of those different types of income streams. I mean, it's nice to get an extra payment every month.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so just make sure you do the proper registrations and applications. You have your annual tax returns filed all the time, even if you earn nothing, and that will entitle you to lots.
All right, awesome. Okay, Gwen, thanks for letting us know. I'm going to put Gwen's details in the bottom of the video. She's also available. She's on Howzit Canada as
Yes.
Gwen's details and Auden's details as well. So, hey, do yourself a favor, man. Just reach out to them and have a quick check and stick to the deadlines and might as well always support the Sapphire. Why not?
Why not?
We can stick together and help each other out. And I mean, these guys, they're very involved in the community as well. That's just one extra thing that I need to add. Gwen and Auden, they always support events. They support the South African Institute of Canada, and they're very involved. I think you guys. Oh my God,
Thanks.
sorry,
No worries.
that didn't work. Hang on. Okay, so yeah, they always support South Africans everywhere. So hey, I'm sure they would give you the best advice. All
Yes,
right, folks.
definitely. Thanks, Kelly. Nice talking
Cheers,
to you
Gwen.
again.
Have a good one.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.